The narrative from ECR Minerals is one of energy and enthusiasm, but does that equate to exploration success for the junior miner, which is focused in Australia? Well, to find out, we're joined by the managing director, Nick Tulloch. So, Nick, hopefully you've recovered from your jet lag after your recent visit to Australia.
Yes, hi Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a trip of lots of travel and lots of meetings and lots of activity and just sort of sleeping when I could, to be honest. So I don't think I ever really sort of grasped the Australian time zone and just sort of slipped back into British hours as soon as I arrived home.
Okay, that suggests endurance to me. But before we get into that trip and talk about, what you saw and who you were having discussions with, that there has been the drilling results from the program at Creswick, which is your gold project. What did those results reveal that gave you confidence to go into the second phase of drilling?
Well, we always planned to do two phases. We always planned to drill at Davy Road and Cuboid Hill, and that was the order. And there's been a bit of a gap between the two programs, which has meant we've actually got the results from Davy Road, which is great because I mean that's given us confidence that the decision made at the outset was absolutely the right decision. I mean, investors will have seen on the RNS, we found gold. The grades have been absolutely terrific. We put out two announcements. The first was the initial results, and the second reflected the bulk sampling, which with percussion drilling makes sense to do. And what we've seen is that, we expected this, and I suppose hope for this. What we've seen is that the grades have increased through the bulk sampling. So Cuboid Hill, very very similar. It's about a sort of 5-minute drive from Davy Road. Um, it looks quite similar. It's sort of raised ground, so we're looking for the source of the gold that's been sort of spotted at sort of surface, sort of further down the slopes. Also a forested area, and we sort of arrive at the site with a high level of confidence, I would say, and if we can repeat what we've done at Davy Road, I think it'll be high fives all round.
Okay, high fives though come at a cost. Drilling programs are expensive. So I'm wondering, are you flush with cash after your recent divestments from the portfolio, or is there some sort of clever finance vehicles in place?
I prefer to say we're quite frugal on our spending. I've said before with investors and shareholders that I'm never afraid to say I'm stereotypically Scottish, and my father brought me up to have an aversion to spending money, and I've taken that into my business life as well as my personal life. So we've tried to be smart at how we spend. We're working with the drilling contractor. I think has been very fair in terms of their pricing. On Davy Road, we came in on budget and on time. And I think not a lot of small mining companies can say that, and we've been quite strict with ourselves, and we're going to continue to be strict with ourselves. What we have done though is we sold a rig which we didn't need that was bought by previous management. We sold an excavator. Between the two of those, that will give us sufficient cash to cover the G&A and more in Australia over the next year. That the rig is paid for in instalments. We also have a piece of land actually at Creswick, which was bought. We don't need to own it in order to work the land. That land will be sold, and the risk is sounding a little bit like a house builder. We're in the process of getting planning permission. The land will be far more saleable if we can put planning in place. So that'll take a couple of months. So in terms of cash, very happy with how the business is financed. We know we're a small business and we're not going to do anything crazy in terms of spending, but we'll make sure we get full value for what we do spend.
Do you have any regrets about selling that drill rig? Because you obviously need infrastructure like that. Is it more expensive going to the drilling contractors as and when on a sort of pay-as-you-go service?
I saw it for the first time when I was in Australia a couple of weeks back, and it's a pretty cool piece of equipment. But we're a mining company. We're not in the business of owning capital equipment like that. Our shareholders should expect us to spend the money in the ground, not owning pieces of machinery. So it was it is still a good rig. I think the buyer has got a decent price, but more importantly, we've got decent cash flow from selling it. So no regrets. It was something that the company shouldn't have bought in the first place. And the right thing to do was to turn it into cash and to use that cash to advance our own business.
Okay, now Nick, in the most recent RNS, there was, I quote, "What was clear from my recent visit and meetings I attended whilst there is that the opportunities in both Victoria and elsewhere in Australia for ECR are potentially very significant." Put that into context for me. What are you planning?
Well, I said before, I think sometimes UK investors, and I would count myself in this, forget the scale of Australia. As I was driving through our tenements in Australia, we could be driving for several minutes before we even reach the particular site within the tenement that we're looking to examine at that point in time. We've got gold at surface. We've got evidence of historic mining. In some cases dating back to the 1800s. Right throughout the tenements. We're in a place that people have been before and have been there successfully. Activity in Victoria, especially, is really ramping up, and again, people watching this, I'm sure, have looked at other RNS and other announcements from listed companies in terms of what they're doing in the area. So we know we're in the right postcode, and we know we're actually in the right location as well. I had a number of interesting meetings whilst I was out there. To your words, it was a test of endurance. Seeing people and using the time as best I could. And there is a lot for a company of our size to go for. Now we've got to be smart. As I said before, we don't have a huge amount of cash, but we spend it wisely and operate sensibly. There's no reason why we can't look a little bit over the fence and just see what else is available. But that's not to say that our own tenements aren't pretty special themselves.
There are rumours circulating around this city that you had discussions with a tier one mining company. So I was doing some investigation about who you could possibly have been speaking to, because in Victoria, you could have been speaking to Rio Tinto or Newmont. Queensland, that's home to Glencore. Any of those names possibly
Yeah,
spoke to
yeah,
you?
they all sound familiar. Well, I was in Victoria, not Queensland, so maybe that's the first clue. I did also go to Western Australia on the way in. Um, I genuinely I used the time as best I could. I was there for 5 days, and I think on day 4, I had sort of breakfast by myself in a town square, and that was the first time I had sort of a half hour to myself. So the idea was to use the trip as full as possible, to see as many people. You never know until you've had the meeting. We've got some interesting prospects within the business. We've got some tax losses that I think could be quite valuable in the right hands. Could be quite valuable for us if ever we go into small scale production. But in the meantime, could be quite valuable for someone else who's in that space. So I was interested to explore that. I was interested to explore what other people were doing, both in our locality and elsewhere. So I came back suitably tired, but that was the plan. So I'm very pleased with how it went.
Okay, small scale production. Do you fancy becoming a producer?
I think it would be wrong if we didn't. I mean, this is our job. Our job is to find what may be under the ground and to turn that into a production story. And whether we do that ourselves, whether we do it in conjunction with someone else, eventually this company needs to generate revenue. We need to generate money. And if we weren't thinking about ways to do that, we wouldn't be doing our job right. But first step, as per recent announcements, we need to see what's there, work out how to get it out economically, and then think about producing it. So this is what we do for a living.
There you go. You're a man of endurance. Nick Tulloch, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Sarah.